Hello again, it's me Mandala, and today I'm back to share another open world buildcraft video. So today I wanted to share my new take on Weaver. So this is an Elementalist build featuring the Weaver Elite spec. They recently did a rework or remake of the Weaver specialization, and they made a few like tiny, not super huge changes, but enough change to where I finally think there's a Weaver build that I'd enjoy playing in the open world in a solo setting. So this is my take on open world solo Weaver, and I'll just get started with the Golem Pull, and then we'll talk about it. Okay. All right. So that might be the best pull I've done actually. With the build. So usually I've been hitting around like 14.5K, but that time I hit like 15.1, so I must have been doing something a little better. I think I was being patient and not rushing the Air 5. But to go into how this build works, so it's doing 15K, and you're thinking, oh, that's not super great. I've seen builds with the new Weaver build for solo that are doing like 20, but there are a few things about this build that are interesting, that are different than a lot of the builds you're looking at, that make this build, in my opinion, far greater than some of the other versions and variants that are out, and a lot more fun in a couple different ways. So this is a full Celestial Power Weaver solo build. So we're running full Selly with Runes of Lissa to help us with our Condi duration, our precision, and our boon duration. We're running Sword Dagger, so Sword main hand, right? Dagger offhand. All right, Superior Sigil of Accuracy, Superior Sigil of Smoldering. All right, and here just to show you that's all Selly. And then we're running Relic of the Pirate Queen. So what this allows us to do is this allows us to generate Perma Quickness, Perma Might, Perma Fury, Perma Swiftness, and for the most part Perma Protection. It's not up all the time, but you can change the build around a little bit to get Perma Prot if you really need it. But yeah, 15.1, and like I said, this is a power geared variant of open world solo weaver in full celly gear. So 15K in full celly gear with a power focus is pretty good, right? So the reason that it's power focused is because instead of taking the traditional, like if you were to ask most buildcraft people what they would take for an open solo world, they'd probably take the earth trait line or even the water trait line over this air trait line, but I'm taking fire air, and that's why it kind of makes this power build. It's technically hybrid, but it's power focused, right? It's got a lot of power priority. I'm prioritizing the power side of the build in order to fully utilize the weapon set um, and strategies of open world that I think are superior to playing a Condi build. So, uh, like I said, right, full Selly, Lissa, Superior Relic of the Pirate Queen, accuracy, smoldering, right? So we've got 100% burn duration. We will be crit capped, and you'll see why we're crit capped, because 55% is crit capped the way this build's set up right now. So 55% crit chance we hit, pretty easy. And I'm using the birthday cake food. All right, but to go over the build and traits, so like what traits we're using. So if I go to the trait lines real quick. So like I said, we're running fire, air, and then weaver, obviously. And so in the fire trait line, we're taking burning precision. So burning you inflict has increased duration, and your critical hits gain a chance to inflict burning. So this is really great because, like I said, we're kind of like power focused, but a hybrid build. So we do like to see our burning happen. So 33% chance on crit to inflict burning with a 5-second cooldown, and then a 20% increased duration to burning. So next thing we're taking is power overwhelming. So while at or above the might threshold, gain increased power. Power bonuses are doubled while attuned to fire, so 150 power baseline, and then we get 300 power if we're at 10 or more stacks of might. And we're always going to be at 10 or more stacks of might because we're also taking Pyromancer's Puissance. So that's this word was annoying. I had to look up how to say it because it's actually just a French word. They're just cheating now. They're just not even using English words. Like technically, it's in the English like dictionary, but they're just cheating at this point. But this skill, gain might for using any skill while attuned to fire, while leaving fire when leaving fire attunement or successfully completing a fire overload. So that's a Tempest thing, so you can ignore that line. Unleash a flame expulsion. So flame expulsion, after a short delay, release a torrent of flame. Allies are granted might, while damage and burning is increased based on might on you. So based on your might stacks, you'll do a big explosion that deals burning and damage depending on how much might you have, and usually that'll be 25 stacks of might. So you can read that more if you want. You can pause and read that more if you need to, or look it up on your own game. You can log in and look at it yourself. But yeah, so that's the fire trait, and just give me 1 second. Okay, and so next up, right? Oh, and I need to talk about miners in the fire, right? So for the miners, Pyromancer's training, your fire weapon skills gain reduced recharge. This is pretty nice because we're going to be in fire a lot. Deal increased strike damage to burning foes. Alright, next is Sunspot, gain a fire aura and damage nearby foes when you attune to fire. So every time we attune to fire, we get a fire aura, which you can read fire aura, envelop in a fiery shield that burns foes, grants might each time you are struck, right? And it lasts 3 seconds, and then it also damages people. So, um, Sunspot, gain fire aura, right? And then lastly is the base empowering flame, so gain power while in fire attunement. So as you can see, there's kind of a power focus. We unfortunately don't get to take Inferno, which would be really nice to switch it to a pure power focus, but this Pyromancer's Puissance is just way too good um, because of the free might generation, basically. Next up is the air trait line. So in air, we're taking Zephyr's Boon. Grant boons to allies you grant auras to, so every time we attune to fire, we do Sunspot, and we grant Fury and Swiftness. There's also other things in the LE trait line that you can use to get an aura, and that can help you keep up your Fury uptime and your Swiftness uptime. And you'll see why we take this one specifically over these other two options. Technically, Ferocious Wind can be a better option. It just increases your damage a little bit. And one with air can also be great. But there's a reason I'm taking Zephyr's Boon is to share up Fury uptime. And I think the Swiftness here is useful because you're going to see why Swiftness is important to this build later. Next up, we're taking Raging Storm. So critically striking a foe grants Fury, gain Ferocity while under the effects of Fury, right? So we get Ferocity while being under the effects of Fury, 180 Ferocity, so just more damage, more crit damage. And then every 8 seconds, we can get 6.25 seconds of Fury uptime. So this is where the majority of our Fury uptime is coming from. And then lastly, we're taking Lightning Rod. So this is a really interesting thing that I did specifically for this build, right? Because we're power focused. I think in air, all the elites are a trap here. Every single one of these is a trap. Fresh air can be interesting, but the problem with fresh air is the kit of Elementalist is not designed for this trait at all. Like this is an interesting trait that anytime a build comes up where fresh air is good, they're like instantly kill it because it's just super broken. So they've just designed Ellie around like this trait never being good. Basically, like I mean, it's not that it's never good. It's always annoying. Like Ellie's already a really fast-paced class where you're switching through attunements a lot, and it's even more annoying when you constantly have to switch into air and do stuff, and I just really don't like using it. So fresh air is kind of a trap, especially in open world. Bolt to the heart, again, another just kind of boring, like deal increased damage to enemies below the health threshold. This is just a boring 10% plus 10% damage modifier, right? But lightning rod, this is technically the worst of the three, right? This is the worst one, but it's doing a very specific thing that helps us shore up our crit chance and our weakness uptime on this build. So cast lightning rod when you disable a foe. So every time you do CC, right, disables include stun, daze, knockback, pull, knockdown, sync, float, launch, taunt, and fear, right? So that whole long list there. You do a little bit of damage, you do that 800 damage, which is nothing, right? It's not good enough. That's not right why we're taking this skill. But you'll see when we look at the Weaver traits, we need the weakness uptime to shore up our crit chance to get crit capped later. But to go through the minors, so Aeromancer's training, gain ferocity, and gain additional ferocity while attuned to air. Air weapon skills gain reduced recharge. So again, plus 300 ferocity while in air, plus 150 ferocity all the time, and then air attunement, reduced recharge. Pretty good for us. The next one, electric discharge. Strike your target with a bolt of lightning when attuning to air. So again, this just gives us a little bit of vuln. It's not that great. It just exists, like free damage kind of, free vuln kind of, but really not good. And then lastly is Zephyr speed. Your chance to critically strike is increased, so we get 5% base crit chance, which is good. While attuned to air, your movement speed is also increased. So another cool thing, right? While we're attuned to air, we get basically like baby swiftness. Swiftness is like 33%. This is baby swiftness, 25%. And yeah, so air is probably like one of the least interesting of the Ellie trait lines. Like there's not much going on here for the most part. But we're taking it specifically. You'll see why we're taking it later. It's an interesting build because I'm using air, which is like the least interesting of the trait lines. Like Earth's more interesting, Water's more interesting, Arcane's more interesting, but we're using air in an interesting way, and we'll talk about it in just a second. Okay, so last up is the Weaver trait line. So in Weaver, right, we get access to the dual stance skills. So in case you're like brand new to Guild Wars 2 and you don't know what that is, so normally when you're playing Elementalist, you're mono element. So right, so this is mono fire. But with Weaver, every time you attune elements, you're not actually attuning the whole thing. You're just swapping the primary, the first two skills really. You're swapping the first two skills to the next element. So if I were going to transition to air, right, then my first two skills become air. My last two skills stay fire, right? Or if I was attuned fire primary in a different element, they become fire. And then the third skill becomes a dual skill, right? So this is why Weaver was probably the coolest spec they made in the Path of Fire era, because these tool attacks were just a lot of unique, different animation, different visuals, cool things. There's like a million of them, right? So if like you go into the hero panel, and you look at the weapon skills, right? The reason why Elementalist has like the longest scroll bar of all is because, not because they have a bunch of weapon options, it's because of all of these dual skills, right? So you can see how 1, 2, 3, there's gonna be 6 dual skills, right, for each weapon combo, with the exception of like hammer. So I think hammer they have 12 because they did a different one depending on what's first and what's second, which is weird. But so there's 12 hammer ones. And then 6 of the dagger ones, 6 pistol, 6 scepter, 6 staff, and 6 spear, and then trident. But who's playing underwater in 2026? Nobody is. Anyway, so dual attack skills are this combined skill. So like if I were to change now to earth attunement, so earth would become my primary, air would become my secondary, and then I get this combined skill, right? And then if I change to water, earth becomes my secondary, water becomes my primary, and I get this dual attack skill. And you can keep going through. You can see all 6 of them if you want. But we're mainly focused on 3 of them. So the big thing that I've done with this build, right, on Weaver, is I've kind of ignored one of the primary mechanics on Weaver, which is mono attunement, right? Single attunement gaming. I'm just going to totally ignore that for this build because I think it just convolutes things and you're giving up a lot of defensive and survivability power to get just a tiny bit of damage and make the build way less fun to play. So to go over the traits for Weaver, we're taking superior elements, so dual attack skills, weaken enemies, attacks against weakened foes have increased critical strike chance. So this is why, if you remember, we were talking about Lightning Rod. This is why we're taking Lightning Rod, because it shores up this weakness uptime, right? Every 4 seconds, we can do a dual attack skill and apply 8 seconds of weakness on our target. Mostly good, mostly covers the uptime, but to make sure it's permanent, we also can do Lightning Rod to just make sure we have more options, more weakness application. This build does have a lot of CC that we'll talk about in just a second when I go over the weapon skills, because I'll be more in depth on this build because it's got a lot of little tiny moving parts that are all really important. But yeah, so we get 20% bonus crit chance. So that's why if you go back to our stats, right, 55% crit chance, right? So 25 from might, which gets you to 80, and then that 20% gets you from 80 to 100%. So now we're crit capped. It's a little wonky with the way I have set up, but I like keeping the full Selly. Um, you could mess around and have a piece that's not celestial and like really mess around with this, but I like that we're burning capped while being crit capped, and that we're full Selly, so it just doesn't. It's not too complicated. But you could definitely like min max it a little bit more, but I'm just not interested in that. It's like you're doing all this work to find the perfect combination of just random gear to ultimately get like 100 damage or something per second, which is silly. But back to the traits. So this is just bonus crit, right? Bonus crit chance. Second trait we're taking is bolstered elements. So gain protection when activating a stance. So stances are the Weaver utility skill. So these are all going to be stance skills. So anytime you press one of these buttons, right? I press one of these buttons, I get some protection. And then the bolstered elements, we'll talk about how that cooldown's not really correct, like 30% correction, 30% cooldown on this, but like I've not seen how that it works exactly. It doesn't work quite like it says. But activating lesser stone resonance when using an elite skill. So when you use an elite skill, you get the second part, right? This other box above bolstered elements that says lesser stone resonance, right? Stance, enter an earthen state, gain barrier periodically over the course of the stance. So if I were to cast Glyph of the Elements here, I would get stone resonance, get some prod uptime, and that pulses barrier for me. But what's interesting is the way this skill kind of works is if you summon the elemental like this, you also get this to proc every time you cast Flame Barrage. So you kind of get a lot of bonus prot by running this Flame Elemental. And so that's why I have it on this build. Ellie's kind of in that state. Ellie kind of just doesn't have fun. Like you could run Weave Self, but I think Weave Self is really convoluted, and like it is a good skill, but it's not, it doesn't add to the fun factor for me. I think it's just a lot of like extra Weaver minigame for very little additional value, when it's just easier to run the Fire Elemental. So that's why I've picked the Fire Elemental. But going back to the traits, right? Bolstered elements. So this kind of shores up our prot, gives us a little barrier, and makes stances more valuable. And then lastly, we're taking Woven Stride. So this is an interesting one because you probably won't see a lot of people take this, but Woven Stride, gain regeneration and cleanse a condition when you grant yourself either swiftness or super speed. So this is where you see the swiftness component take into effect. So we get swiftness every time we get an aura, and remember from the fire trait line, Sunspot, gain a fire aura every time we enter the fire attunement. So this gives us a cleanse. Every time we gain swiftness, we get a cleanse. So Updraft gets us a cleanse and gets us regen. And then the most important thing is the sword auto. The second of 3 parts of the auto attack chain, so this is the auto attack chain for air, gives you swiftness. So you can use this as like perma cleanse, right? So if you got stuck with a bunch of Condis, you can just camp air primary and auto attack with your quickness and cleanse all these conditions and get a bunch of regen back. stack up all your regen, and it just makes this build a lot more survivable. Protects you against condition damage, and just like incidental Condis really well. And so we just naturally get rid of a few Condis just with our regular rotation. And like I said, you could camp the Lightning Attunement primary and auto attack in Lightning, and that'll get you the cleanse, the Condi removal, and the regen each time. But yeah, so the reason why this is interesting is because most people will be focused after the rework on Elements of Rage and Flow State, but I think both of these just kind of exacerbate my biggest gripes with the way Elementalist is designed right now. Is like every single part of Elementalist minus like Tempest is about like pressing the buttons as quickly as you possibly can, like, and nothing else matters, right? Like cycle through the attunements as quickly as you can, press the buttons as quickly as you can. No nuance, just the fastest rotation you could possibly pull off is the best way to play the class, no matter what. Like, it's never correct to pause or wait or do anything, and I hate this about the elemental spec. Like, you have this, like, you're the Avatar, right? Right? You're Aang from Avatar, and the only way you can play the game is just piano class. And it's like there's no flavor to it at all, and I hate how every single part of Elementalist on every single elite spec is designed around this without fail, and it's just really silly and a waste of everyone's time and potential um, to do that. But again, I just think there's more fantasies, gameplay fantasies, than just press the buttons quick and cycle through all the elements as quickly as you possibly can. So that's why I don't like these things, Flow State and Elements of Rage. It's also why I don't like Weave Self too much either. But that's like a way more complex topic. That's literally like maybe 20 people in the community are like worth having a conversation about with. And that's just not the purview of the solo builds. But like I said, Woven Stride, gain regen, and cleanse condition when you grant yourself either swiftness or super speed. So this just shores up our survivability a lot, and you'll see why this is really useful in a second. So as far as the minor traits, you have Elemental Polyphony, so gain attributes based on your current attunement. So Fire Attunement gives you power, Water Attunement gives you healing power, Air Attunement gives you ferocity, Earth Attunement gives you Condi damage. Next minor is Elemental Refreshment, gain vitality, so we just get base plus 180. They said Weaver's too squishy, Elementalist too squishy. We're gonna give them base 180 vitality so they aren't so squishy. Okay, fair enough. Gain vitality, grant barrier to yourself when using dual attack skill. So every time we use a dual attack skill, 1,000, right? 1,100, almost 1,200 barrier for free every time we use a dual attack. So pretty good. Extra survivability, pairs well with bolstered elements, and you'll see why this barrier proccing plus the regen proccing plus all this defensive stuff really adds up long term and makes this build really tanky. So we'll talk about that in just a second. And then lastly, right, Weaver, we get dual attacks and stances, right? So that's all the switching. So really quickly, I'm going to set up the Golem another way, and I'm going to show you how survivable this build is. So this build is actually really tanky, like really crazy tanky, almost too tanky. So to fully demonstrate this, I'm actually going to do something I almost never do, which is use some Ascended food. So this is spherified peppercorn spiced oyster soup, right? That's a mouthful. But this is basically very similar to the birthday cake. So the birthday cake's like plus 40 or something, or plus 39 or 38. I don't know exactly what the number is. And this is just plus 45. So this is just a slightly better version of the birthday cake, but it also gives you minus 10% incoming damage, which is just going to help us demonstrate something about the build. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to change one of my utilities. So normally I run Arcane Shield because Arcane Shield is broken, and we'll talk about utilities later, but we're going to run the Signet of Earth, so reduce incoming strike damage, and so that plus the Ascended food, right? And so you see the stat difference won't be really that big. So we were at like 57.6 or something. Now we're at 57.9. This was like 60.2. I was at 60.5. So the stat difference really isn't a big deal at all. It's just that minus 10% incoming damage that's pretty nice. And so now I'm going to do something that's going to surprise a lot of people. I'm going to put on the heavy, the extremely threatening damage field, and hopefully be able to tank it. We'll see if I get it right the first time. anytime you put on the extremely threatening, you have to get your opener right, or you're gonna die no matter what, even if your build's awesome. So we'll see if I get it correct, but yeah, this build can tank extremely threatening, which is crazy. So let me set that up, and I'll show you real fast.
A deadly raid squad is a happy raid squad. Practice your skills using our state-of-the-art golems.
Yeah, and so like not even like survive it barely and have to make sure you get to your healing part of your rotation kind of tank. It's like tank it like the damage doesn't even show up on your HP bar kind of tank, you know? Really, really tanky, and I really didn't lose that much damage output, right? Like 14.4, like we're like 14.5 DPS still, uh, while tanking extremely threatening. So yeah, I think this build's pretty good, uh, pretty strong, kind of OP, honestly, if you ask me. This is a pretty strong build. So the way it works, right, is we talked about um, all the little incidental survivabilities, right? So we're getting free Condi cleanse. That really doesn't matter for surviving the golem, tanking in the golem room, but we're getting passive regen. We're getting passive barrier from all our stances and all our elite skill procs. We're getting barrier from doing our dual attack skills. Um, and then we're healing from Signet of Restoration, right? So Signet passive, grant health every time you cast a spell. Technically, everything you do in LE counts as a spell, which is why quickness is really valuable. So you're just healing a bunch from just spending all of your like casting all your abilities. You're healing a bunch from every time you proc swiftness. You get the regen, and just stacking perma regen heals you. Um, you have perma prod uptime, so you're really tanky. Because of the Selly stats, we have like 2,700 armor, right? So that's pretty huge. Along with our giant health pool, right? We have 22k health, which is crazy for Ellie. That's a bunch. That's a ton of health for one of the least naturally vitality-based classes in the game. Um, but all of this together, right? This is why when you ask me like, why would you run Selly if you're in a power-focused build? This is why, because Selly's just the best. Like, there's nothing even close to the Selly stat line, and this is good for the game, right? It's not like, oh, Selly's broken, and that just makes buildcraft kind of boring. But no, this is how you really want people to be playing the game. I think is trying to build around maximizing their potential in Celestial Gear. I think it's more fun. I think if they nerf Selly to the ground and force you into a 3 or 4 stat gear set, the game becomes a lot less fun in a solo and open world scenario. And they really shouldn't do that. So like anyone who's saying nerf Selly is like they don't have the game's best interest in mind. They're just being an elitist weirdo freak. So yeah, that's pretty intense way to put it. But yeah, that's pretty much the baseline of it. Like Celestial Gear is really important for the health of this game long term. And they have to keep it around, even though it's super broken and like the only gear you really want to use in open world like 90% of the time. But that's good for the game, right? So, but I digress. So back to how the build works, right? Why are we so tanky, right? So we get this passive sustain, so we're getting passive regen, we're getting passive healing from Signet of Restoration. We have a lot of barrier uptime, right? So Armor of Earth gives you barrier. The dual skill, Lava Skin, gives you barrier. You get barrier every time you use a dual attack. You get barrier every time you use a stance, right? Every time you use Primordial Stance. Every time you activate Glyph of Elementals or the Flame ability in Glyph of Elementals, right? So you're just constantly proccing barrier. You're constantly healing. You can dodge a lot of attacks in this build, right? There's lots of natural dodges, natural movement abilities, and like I said, just really high base stats to go along with it. So, to go over the utilities a little bit, so the reason why I switched to Signet of Earth, you could probably get away with not even taking Signet of Earth, but this just gives you that. This just really helps you showcase the how tanky this build is. But right, this is 10% damage reduction. But what I would actually take in this spot is Arcane Shield, because Arcane Shield's broken, right? So to go over utilities, right, we talked about Signet of Restoration. I would never press this. No reason to press this. You want the passive. We aren't running the Earth trait line that lets you press this button, so don't. So don't press it. Just let it do the passive thing. That's what it's there for. Next, you have Armor of Earth, right? This is a cantrip. Protect yourself with Earth Armor and gain protection and stability. Then gain barrier for each unique boon you have. So you get a bunch of upfront barrier. You get 10 stacks of stab, which is crazy. It's a stun break. It's on a low cooldown. It gives you prot. This is just the best stun break all-purpose utility on Elementalist right now. This thing's broken. The next best thing is Arcane Shield, right? So this is also a stun break. Instead of giving you stab and prot and barrier, it gives you basically triple Aegis, right? So it just gives you 3 stacks of this Arcane Shield, and so you can block the next 3 hits. If you block the next 3 hits, it does a little damage burst, but that's not really important. What's important is that it's basically like, right, this is your oh crap button. Like, this is like, oh gosh, bad things are happening to me. I need time to like stall to get to the next thing I want to do. So this is your button to press in that emergency scenario. Next, we're taking Primordial Stance. So this is just bonus damage. If you wanted to take a third utility here, you could, but I kind of like the visuals and like having a utility skill that does damage. Usually, I'm a sucker for making everything in the utility bar a reactionary press, but sometimes it's good to have the little damage thing. So this just pulses based off your attunement. So if you can see right now, I'm fire air, so it's pulsing the fire and air stuff. But if I were to switch to earth, now I'm earth fire, and you'll see the earth fire pulse. If I switch to water earth, you'll see water earth pulse, right? Switch to water air, you'll see water air pulse, and they all do different things, right? So the fire one does burning, the water one does chill, the lightning one does vuln, and the earth one, right? So lightning being the air one. The earth one does bleeding, right? So deal damage, inflict conditions based on your current attunement, right? So that's all the stance does. It just does that, and then you get prot from the bolstered elements, part of the kits. And then lastly, we're taking the elemental glyph of elementals. So this just summons an elemental. The best one, in my opinion, is the fire one because it can proc really often. So we want to summon the fire elemental. It has the longest uptime, a relatively short cooldown if you lose it, and every 15 seconds you can just blast them and get some free prot out of it. So that's really, really good. So really strong. Hopefully they don't nerf this interaction too much because I really like it. I think it's like a niche, like a really interesting way that it works. They probably will. They probably will do a pass on bolstered elements and make it not proc every time you cast this, but I think that'd be sad. I think if you just change this cooldown, if you actually made the cooldown work and changed it to 15 seconds, that would actually be an interesting way to play the game instead of just nerfing it like they're gonna do. They're just gonna delete that you can do this probably. But I really like the way it works right now. I think it's cool. So that's why you take that. So those are your utility skills. So to explain the weapon skills a little bit more. So I'm going to turn the damaging field off.
Feel free to approach the console and begin combat practice. If you have any questions, I'm all ears.
She's all ears, guys. Respond. Okay, so what I like to do is I like to start in fire air. So the reason I do this is because I think Ride the Lightning's a really good like opening skill. So I can be all the way like a million miles away and I can ride the lightning in and then start combat from there. It also gives me a launch, right, the updraft, and so that's how you can get your first initial stack of quickness from the Pirate Queen relic. So all you do is, right, you enter with Ride the Lightning, hit them with the updraft, all right, and that gives you the swiftness, which gives you regen, you get some fury, you get some quickness, you start stacking might, right, because we're in fire attunement, remember, Pyromancer's Puissance, that gives us the might stacks, and so it gives us 25 stacks of might, and then we can just, the uptime on that's really long, so we can just ride that through the whole kit, through the whole rotation. But you start in here, you use all your skills. Then I go to Earth to get Lava Skin, and then you just cast the stuff pretty quickly. Everything else doesn't really matter. You could probably even skip Earth and Vortex if you wanted to, but there's no reason not to press it. And then from here, you go back to Air, right? And so in Air is where all our CC skills are. So you need to make sure that you don't use them too fast, because you want to proc the quickness each time. So you get quickness for that one, get the quickness for the dual skill, right? And then you get the quickness for Earthquake, right? And this is where a lot of our quickness uptime comes from. It makes it really comfy build to play. The fact that you just have all this quickness, and like I said, you can perma-stack your regen just by autoing in Air. And this just gives you a lot of uptime, just to make sure that like it's not like a tight rotation, right? Like you're not really struggling to upkeep anything as long as you're going through relatively quickly. So like I said, you start lightning secondary, so air secondary, fire primary, right? So you start in this combo. You do your whole rotation in here. You go to Earth. You do your whole rotation in the Earth fire setup. And then you do your whole rotation in the air Earth setup. And then you go back to air lightning, right? So air lightning is kind of where you want to camp. This is where you're doing the most damage on this build because, like I said, it's a power prioritized hybrid build. So you kind of want to camp, like the pause in your rotation is coming from air fire. Like I said, I don't like to mono attune. Like it's just not worth it to me. I think the base stats increase from Elemental Polyphony is like 200 ferocity is a lot. Like you don't really want to lose 200 ferocity or 200 power to solo attune to mono element. So I really just don't think there's a reason to. I think it's more fun to just ignore it. I mean, like I'm sure you could find a way to do more damage by switching in Cauterizing Strike and then going in air and then doing the air one. This one, Quantum Strike. But I don't think those abilities are very fun. I think they're a little clunky. All the mono sword skills are a little clunky. They're not my favorite, and I think it's just best to ignore them and just focus on having fun. I think like a lot of people in the buildcraft scene will just make a build that's just like extremely annoying and not fun. But this build, I think, is fun. I think Sword and Dagger is the most fun combo, and it's got a lot of movement, lots of unique stuff. And like I said, you're really ignoring the water attunement because water just your damage goes like just explodes. Your damage is just 0 if you switch to water. Water on these two weapons is not good, but the one use for water is if you can't attack the boss and you still need to survive, then you go in the water attunement and stall. So you can, there's a lot of stall in water, so you could just stall in the water attunement, heal yourself up a little bit, and then try to find your way back in. That's the hardest part of like pressing the water button is once you press the water button, you have to like use your brain and get back to your normal skill rotation, which can be challenging, right? It can be challenging to like remember what the next button you should press is once you hit water. And you could be out of your rotation for a really long time, and that really hurts your damage, really hurts how the build works. So like I said, water is like a last resort. Like there's nothing to hit. That's the only time you'd want to enter water. Is there's nothing to hit, but I need a little bit of healing. Okay, let me go to water attunement for a little bit. But other than that, you want to stay with the big three: the fire, air, earth, right? And you want to go, remember, fire, earth, air, fire, earth, air, right? Fire. So you start in like air secondary, fire primary, right? And then you just go fire, earth, air. and that's how you stay in the rotation. But yeah, the sword skill is really fun. Like I said, lots of movement, lots of cool animations. So that's why I really like this build. So as far as showcasing it, like I said, this is a really complex build. There's lots of talking that we did, but just to showcase it out in the wild, let's go do our normal fun little chalk. And then we might do one other thing, but the video is getting kind of long, and I think I think the extremely threatening field kind of speaks for itself. Like, this build's crazy. So let me do the chalk, and then we'll talk some more. So yeah, pretty easy. Sorry for not talking there. But yeah, so pretty easy. This boss room's always terrible if you have a minion, because that guy, that lady, she kind of just deletes all your minions. If you've ever been in here with a ranger pet, your pet always dies if you're soloing in here, because just the way her AoE works, it just kind of deletes your pets. But still really easy, right? We have lots of stun breaks, lots of blocks, lots of evades, lots of CC, so pretty easy kill there. Where this build really shines is kind of just like general open world play. Like I said, lots of movement, you're really fast, and you're really survivable, right? And so this is kind of where the power setup really is good. It just allows you to burst things down a little quicker, so you're just not stuck like winding up Condis on things. And also, like, the starter, right, your opener elemental combo is also your like primary damage combo, so you can just kind of hang out in here and just focus on fire air. If you're fighting things that aren't that threatening, right, you can just kind of camp here and kind of live in this zone a little bit, and then only if you want to are you forced to. Only if something's taking longer do you actually have to go through the rotation and figure all that stuff out. But it's really good, like I said, of just like jumping around, taking out these regular mobs. Ooh, this guy's moving a lot. Okay. Like I said, very mobile. Again, super survivable, like we're not taking a lot of damage, and it really is a build that does kind of just... Oh, and I pressed the wrong stuff there. So that's probably the only hard part, is if you get out of your sequence, it can be hard to get back if you aren't really familiar with the way Ellie works, with the way Weaver works. But it's not too big a deal to press the wrong button. The attunement swap cooldown's pretty low. As you can see, just kind of running around open world, like, you're very strong. You really don't have a lot of weaknesses on this build. Really any at all. The biggest weakness is your own skill level at the game. Like, this still is like, all elementalists, like I said, all elementalists, and the music's so loud here. I'm actually gonna move back to Arborstone. So, but like I was saying, the biggest weakness of elementalists is that like 95% of builds you're gonna play are just press the buttons really fast. Piano class, which I hate, because like this could be a lot more interesting of a class, but they want it to be piano class for whatever reason. Someone thinks they're cool because they can press the buttons quick, I guess. But anyway, so yeah, super survivable, pretty good damage. And then the last thing I wanted to show, oh, that's my dog going crazy. One sec. Okay, hopefully my dog does not care about the thing anymore that's out there, and we'll be quiet. But all right, last thing. So this is kind of for just all the like the people who want to comment like, oh my gosh, he's running Selly in a power build. Why is he doing that? There's no way that's good. What are you doing with that bonus condition damage? Oh, and like first off, it's a hybrid build, but just to like kind of kill that sentiment dead, I made a Condi version with the same weapon setup. So this is the Condi version. So instead of, we're still taking fire, we're going to take the earth attunement instead. We're going to take burning rage instead of power overwhelming. So this is the Condi version of that skill. We're going to take the earth attunement. We're taking serrated stones, strength of stone, and then stone heart. And then the weaver traits all the same utilities. For the gear, a little different, right? It's still full Selly, but we're taking Rune of the Trapper, and we're taking Superior Sigil of Agony, Superior Sigil of Smoldering, right? So this gets us bleed cap and burning cap. We're not crit capped anymore, you'll notice, and that's part of the reason why this build. So just to like I said, sometimes people just don't know what they're talking about, and they like to tell me like, oh, because you're not using one of the 9 stats to its fullest potential. Oh, dog, please. Okay, my dog's going crazy. But just because you're not using one of the 9 stats doesn't automatically make Selly Gear useless. Just because you have a power focus doesn't make Selly Gear useless. Like, again, like 7 of the 9 skills have nothing to do with condition damage at all, and 8 of the 9 are still useful on a power build, right? Expertise is still useful on a power build if you actually understand how the game works. But yeah, because vulnerability is a thing. Vulnerability uptime's a thing. Incidental condis are a thing. So Selly Gear is still good on power. And so here's the version of the build. Now we have a Condi focus, so it should do more damage, right? Right? I'm in Selly Gear. It should do more damage, right, guys? I even built around it. I didn't even stand air. I'm doing Earth Attunement, right? And I changed everything to Condi. It should do more damage now, right, guys? Right? Right? And nope, nope, it doesn't. It doesn't do more damage, right? Because, like I said, I'm utilizing the systems of the I'm utilizing the systems within the game to their max potential to really optimize what we're doing, right? To optimize Fury uptime, um, to optimize Vuln uptime, right? So if we do the Condi version of the same build, no, the Selly gear does not mean it's worse, right? This is 2k less damage. This is 2k less damage, guys. And technically, right? Technically, you could consider this a little tankier, right? Because Stoneheart, the way that this is working, right, is you do take less damage the way this is set up, but I do think it's less fun. It's less fun. You have less boons. Um, you're more vulnerable to Condis because you have less Condi cleanse than you do with the other setup. You aren't crit capped, so your upfront burst is a lot lower. You're gonna have a harder time killing random trash mobs. It's not gonna be as fun to play for a general playthrough, like a casual playthrough or an open world story playthrough, right? A combo story playthrough, right? If you're just playing through the game for your first time, this build's just way less fun. Way less fun. Um, could I have pressed the buttons a little better? Probably. But it's still a lot less damage, right? It's still almost 2k, 1.5 to 2k less damage. To play the game in a less fun way, to utilize the combat systems and all the systems in the game in a less fun way, uh, and you're running Trapper Runes, which is just like cop out, like you don't have any ideas, you're running Trapper Runes, which I hate. Um, but yeah, so could I also change the weapon? Yeah, you could change this to like focus, but then you're defeating the whole purpose of the build, right? The purpose of the build, the purpose of gaming as a whole, is to enjoy what you're doing, not to like BOP. Uh, so I think taking these skills away, right? These dagger offhand skills, and replacing them with these really boring focus skills, just isn't very fun. Or even these really, I mean, the Warhorn aren't awful, but it's just not the gameplay fantasy I'm trying to focus on in this build. You could take Warhorn. Warhorn would be fine, um, and it would actually be good. But like I said, not as fun. I think there are just a lot of really annoying abilities on the Warhorn, right? Cyclone and Lightning Orb are annoying. Heat Sink and Wildfire are annoying. Sand Squall, I don't know why this one exists. This one's just silly. They need to rework this one. It just makes Warhorn this weird, like, jack of all trades, like awful, like centerpiece of buildcraft that I don't like. And so I'm not a fan of Warhorn in that regard. Because it's like it's just that heat sink. It's just that these are OP support geared options, and you're not really like it's just not as fun, right? Dagger's more fun, right? Ride the Lightning is super fun. I would take Dagger just for Ride the Lightning because it's awesome. But anyway, so yeah, Condi not better. Selly Gear good on power. More news at 11. Um, but just to go back to our regular one. So like I said, this is a complicated build, so it's like we've been talking for a really long time. Um, and Elementalist brings out the worst in my criticisms for the game because I think this is the class that I want to like the most. And it's the class that's the hardest to like in the game because they just keep nerfing it or just like designing to the same fantasy over and over and over and over and over again. But um, this build is really fun. Weaver has always been my favorite Elementalist Elite spec. I think is the most interesting, has the best lore, has the best design and gameplay fantasy. Um, but it suffered for a really long time, and I think as much as I don't like the way they design Elementalist, they made some changes here that made this build possible, and that's a really good positive thing. So really like this build. It's really, really strong. You should really try it out. And let me know what you think. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Selly good on power. Don't forget, sometimes there are power builds that can use 8 out of the 9 stats. And on those builds, Selly is good, even though you're doing mostly power damage. So, that's pretty much all I have, but hopefully you like this build, and let me know what you think, and try it out. It's really fun. I really enjoy playing this. This is probably going to be my primary open world build now, for as long as they don't nerf it, just because I think it's really fun. I'm actually replaying the whole game, I think, on this build, just because I love Ellie, and finally there's a build that's fun and interesting and engaging on Elementalist to play. So yeah, you'll see me. I'll be running around just playing through all the game again, just to test it out. So that's how much I like this build. That's how much I think it's great. But yeah, anyway, see you later. Bye.